there have been some who said that Yoon is basically South Korea's version of Trump because he's an outsider, as we just heard, but he also has kind of a capacity to have some of these provocative statements. Some say that he fueled anti-feminist wave to try and gather young men to vote for him. I want to get your thoughts on that and this belief that perhaps he's out of this populist mold of a Trump, a Boris Johnson, a Jair Bolsonaro.
Well, I do think, he is definitely an outsider. As Professor Kong said, he's definitely new to politics. He doesn't have the polish. I don't think he's fully grasped the weight of his words, especially hopefully he'll be better trained by the time he actually takes office. But I do think, there is a sense that the party is behind him. And that a lot of his positions will be really more traditional party positions, and that he's really just sort of the voice and the face of this movement right now, rather than actually having a vision of his own that he's trying to accomplish.
And Jenny, I was watching some of the analysis prior to the election, and people were saying, watch the young voters because they're a lot more elastic. They're not married to one party or another. They're more concerned about their own issues, which of course are the rising prices of homes and of course youth employment. Give me your sense. Is that true? Were they a deciding factor? I know 18-year-olds, this was their first chance to vote in this election.
I do think they were a major voting bloc. And I do think this whole, especially the gender aspects of this, were a driving force in this past election, or in yesterday's election. The feminist versus anti-feminist movement, I think he really capitalized on that. And it will be it's hard to see how he will navigate that space as he actually takes office, whether he'll make good on some of the promises that he made during the campaign to the anti-feminist movement that will really set back women's rights and women's social and economic capacity in the future. So I think it's a really tricky dynamic now, and one that actually there were several young people, I think, that were disenfranchised that didn't want to vote ahead of some of the latest rhetoric that came out. So I think it did actually spur more young people to vote in this election.
Einar, of course, any election there, people start to wonder what the relationship's going to be like between the ROK and China. He seems to be leaning in a direction where perhaps he's going to take a much harder line with China. What's the view in Beijing?
Well, quite frankly, he's made it clear that his priority is a trilateral improvement of relations with the United States and Tokyo, and a harder line with Beijing. So it's not clear exactly what that is going to mean, because there's so much business that goes on, trade. And obviously the conservatives have always been very, very interested in trade. They do not want to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. So he's going to have to tread a very thin line. But, this is typical of the kind of populist politics that you see, quite frankly, in the U.S., where, candidates really didn't address the issues, which, as you mentioned, are youth unemployment, inequality, rising house prices, and how to deal with North Korea. Instead, they concentrated on, personal battles and things like that. So we'll have to see where the actual positions come out.